everybody that came by tonight. Let's do a quick roll call here. And we were already starting to talk in the background there while you guys were coming in. Cheryl's here. Ryan, I'm just going to call you RD because I don't want to mess up your last name. Kyle Anderson. We got Gavin from GM Survival. We have Uncle Al's in here, Diebold Frog 79. We have, let's see, going through here. We have Reed's in here, Manifestation of Imagination. I have Alana's in here. Alana wanted to come up on the panel, but they're telling me I have enough people for now. So uh, Alana is actually in charge in the chat room. So you guys listen to Alana. Don't be breaking the rules, okay? So we have AK Page out there. She's the room monitor. And we have Ron Knightslip here. He is the guy that knows a lot about planning. He is the Green Wizard. So let's see what else.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll post my book real quick.
Yep, I insist you do. And then I have Southern Ohio Prepping. That's if everybody don't know him, you need to get over there and make sure you're showing him some love. And tonight we're going to be talking mostly. I'm going to just turn it over to Ron here in a second, and we're going to be talking about gardening and growing your own garden. A lot of people don't understand there's a difference between saying I garden and I grow my own garden and actually making the garden work for you. So that's why we chose this topic for tonight. Try to get you guys thinking in a different direction here because a lot of people don't even think that you just go out there and you plow up the garden and you make little rows and you put your seeds in there. But there's actually more to it, and if you really think about it as gardeners and such, it actually does take you guys a lot of time to nurture everything and make it come around. And you have a lot of trouble with some of your plants, and you have to go out in the YouTube community or wherever you go for your social networking and ask a lot of questions trying to figure it out. So we're going to be here tonight, try to take some of your questions and turn them into making you be able to make it work for you. So with that said, I'm going to just turn it over to Ron. He's going to start out.
That puts me on the spot a bit. Yeah, appreciate that.
No problem.
Gardening and prepping. You have to understand that the food that we currently have in our grocery stores is running on the NPK system if we're lucky. And if you go into the system and you follow it per the NPK system, per the scientists, per the chemists, there's only 12 amendments currently being used in our soils. Now, understand, we've been scientifically tested. We actually are deficient. We lead the world. We have 85% deficiency in all of our soils, and they're still preaching the NPK system. We have to get off that system. The human body needs 90 minerals, not 12. So we're not feeding our plants correctly in our gardens, and we're not getting the results we can get. So if you're prepping, you want to prep with the best, you need to be looking at growing your own gardens. You got to fix your soils first and get all the garbage out. My book explains how to do all of that stuff and gives you the amendment supplies that you need all in one shot so you can just walk through, not make my mistakes, save a bunch of money, and do something right and get yourself healthier. Because what if it does actually hit the fan? What if, as we know is coming, the food prices are getting ready to skyrocket and go through the roof this year because of all the flooding? And there's my book, The Green Wizard's Guide. I'll post it again a couple of times. But
I just showed it while you were talking.
Yeah, this year with all the flooding that we've had across this country, meat prices are going up, cattle prices are going up, food prices are going up, the grocery store prices are going up. You guys don't know what's getting ready to happen. It's all deliberate. It's all been designed this way. The soils will not retain moisture anymore, and that's number one key. If the food web's dead, the soil won't absorb water anymore and your plants won't grow. That's the bottom line. We've got to fix the soil to fix the plants to get everything back in line. When you see the big prices this year, remember me saying it, because everything is getting ready to go up. And the only thing that could have saved you was your garden this year. How's that for starting off?
That's pretty good. All right, jump in there. Reed, talk about what you and Ron were talking about just before I went live.
Oh, well, like I was saying, it's from my personal experience, a lot of certain stuff that you'll see on YouTube and others like that. A lot of things people are talking about is very regionally specific. See, I'm out here in New Mexico and I'm in a desert. My soil is loaded with all sorts of minerals. The pH is around 7.5.
Awesome. Oh my God, I'd kill for them.
Well, but the thing is it takes a lot of work to sort of get things growing well out here. And the other thing is I found is a ton of soil that is like when people say, oh, when it gets real hot, mulch all your plants, put this on the mulch. I kill things. If I mulch things, everything dies like crazy out here. It's best to let the desert soil be how it is and stuff.
That's and I preach that in my book. No, do not mulch. Don't. You need a cover crop. You need something growing. You need something that was once growing, not a dead tree that's all ground up, that's color dyed, that's going to kill the food web and stop your results. And that's what you're complaining about. You killed your results.
And I moved to companion planting a long time ago. That's the absolute best thing for me out here.
That's
one of the things I plant.
One key.
Yeah, the one thing I plant every year is always around the Three Sisters. I always have at least some of that going on in places.
Oh, you want 3 to 5 actually.
Well, if you look on my channel, Ron, you might get a kick out of looking at some of my oddball keyhole gardens. They're overgrown forests.
I love those. I love those. That's the way to grow. Honestly, it is. When you've got soils in questions, keyhole, because what you're doing underneath that, wait until you roll some of those keyholes away and see how alive that soil is underneath the keyholes.
Well, we also, when we were building it up, I have one under construction. I filled it with all sorts of the old plant matter from the previous years. I let them sit in there for a couple of years.
Awesome.
And lots and lots of charcoal. I put lots of charcoal from old fires in there. And then I till it in with the soil and grind it up.
Awesome. That's the way to go. Keep that life alive. Keep it moist.
And one of the most amazing plants I have found that works out here for me is a bean that's native to the area. It's called the tepary bean. And it is the most productive bean I have ever seen in my entire life. It is crazy how many beans that thing makes. And it's the most drought tolerant bean in the whole world, apparently.
That's awesome.
What's it called?
It's called a tepary, Tepary. I have a video on my channel called Beans of Life, and I talk about them. And I've got brown, I've got blue speckled, I've got black, and I've got white ones.
Are those beans you're throwing in the drawer?
Those are some of them. I also grow black beans because I like the taste of traditional black beans, and then like red kidney beans and stuff, and things. Some of the things though I'm working on is potatoes are very hard to grow out here, and I finally got a hold of real potato seed. Like they look like tomato seeds, and there's a guy out of Utah. His name's Joseph Lofthouse, and he does a lot of projects to bring back genetic diversity on seeds. And so he's been working on potatoes, and he's also been working on real garlic seeds and stuff. I'm going to get a set from him later too. But I found that after several generations of growing my own things, they do well out here. They're more adapted. So 2 of the new projects I'm working on are going to be potatoes and then chickpeas. I really want to have a set of chickpeas that do well out here.
Chickpeas would be good. I was watching a program on TV just a few days ago, and they were saying they're going to be taking the genetics in the way farmers do their crop now. You know how they've genetically altered them to grow better crops, they're finding now
It's
that
horrible.
because the heat the length of the hot summer is no longer like 37 days. Now it's like 90 some days. So they're finding that genetic seed that they made grow bigger is not working anymore because the season's longer. So
Well,
now
plus all the stuff.
they're going to take that genetically altered seed. They're going to take those away, and they're going to start using seeds that are, I think they're microbial. I probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's microbial, I think. And they're going to start using stuff that is actually in the soil, bugs and stuff like that, and try to make seeds grow better that way. That will be able to grow in a longer heat season. I think that was what they were saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need heirloom seeds from the zone you're in, which is what Reed was saying earlier before we turned on. You know, he's got 2 and 3 generations before he's actually getting production crops, because he's got to basically build his own heirloom stock because of the soil conditions he's currently dealing with.
And it's also terrifying if you look at the way our systems are set up, is to have all this stuff that's, clones of everything. We get one disease and it's just going to wipe out massive crops.
Right.
Having a good genetic diversity is key to be able to survive diseases and bugs that come through areas. At least I think so.
I popped somebody in here. Who did I pop in here?
Palmetto prepper.
Palmetto. Okay. Hey, Anthony.
Do you agree with that, Ron?
I couldn't see who it was.
Hey, what's up? Hey, how y'all doing today?
Hi, Anthony.
Good. Have you been keeping up?
All right, you got me now?
Yeah, are you keeping up with what we're talking about?
Yeah, I was in the chat and I was trying to bounce back and forth between the YouTube app and then this thing, so I was trying to not get lost.
Yeah. You got anything to add yet into it?
Well, I'd like to keep going about the biodiversity, not the biodiverse seeds, but like the inoculation of the seeds. Is that what you're kind of getting at, Will?
Yeah, I was trying to word it right, but that was a few days ago. I forget. I'm old.
Well, the beans, a lot of beans and peas, they need to be inoculated prior to planting to really get that nitrogen from the air down into the soil, because that's what they're for. People just can't put down beans and peas and expect them to fix nitrogen just like that. You have to, not all of them, some of them do it automatically, but you get maximum effort if you actually get like an inoculant and dust the seeds, with it, then plant them. So that's one thing I thought you were getting.
Talk about injecting them somehow. They probably do it like in a mass.
Well, it's the beans actually, and things that do nitrogen fixers, they're actually gathering a specific bacteria into their roots to help nitrogen fix. If your soil's well alive, the beans can naturally do this very easily. If your soil isn't maintained and alive very well, they're not going to do it very well. So,
right. And that's why they're talking about inoculating, because they're trying to hide the fact that they've destroyed most of the soil. They've blocked most of the soil from being able to do this stuff the right way. They've slowed down the food web. I mean, if you go out and you check with the scientists, and the scientific reports are in, and they're saying that 90% of our current greenhouse gases are caused by the death of the food web. They're destroying the soils with all the spraying.
Oh, you talking about the methane then, Ron?
No. Well, you're calling it methane. It's just the carbon release. It's the food web dying. The food web is struggling so hard to survive and keep everything going that it's just wiping everything else out. And that's where the actual greenhouse gases are coming from. In the measurement, it's actually coming from the food web. I think we lost Will's mic.
I think so too.
Yeah, I see him talking, but I don't hear him.
Will,
hey, Will,
microphone guy. Will, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Will. Somebody
you
type that in chat. Maybe he can read it.
Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
there we go. Now we
Yeah,
got
we
you.
got you.
All right. I must have played with the thing again while I was trying to talk. I'm playing with my thing. All right. What I was talking about is the growing season's getting longer, is what they were saying. They're saying because the heat, what used to be only for a period of like 37 to 45 days, now they're saying the heat is like 97 days long. So they're saying that that's messing with the growing part of the seeds. That the seeds aren't genetically made to grow for that long.
Right, but all this global warming, they're going to fix that, right?
What global warming? I didn't say
Actually-
global warming. I just said the heat is getting more.
Right.
Actually, since you brought that up, Ron, I saw something really cool in the news that I could get behind. A group of scientists have calculated that if for climate change, if for CO2 projections, they could actually stop it if we plant a couple billion trees. Sounds good to me.
Well, they just have to plant the right tree. We can actually fix this in 2 years.
Isn't that
And
what they
fix the
used to
carbon
do?
back in the soil where it belongs.
Apple trees, right?
No, actually.
I don't remember what trees they were saying, but they were saying just a lot of trees.
Somebody
And,
said something about bamboo.
It's the bamboo tree.
Bamboo.
It's actually grass, and it grows to full length and full height in 3 years. That would be
I
the
actually
one
want to get. Oh,
quickest
sorry,
way
Ron.
to capture all of the carbon, strip it back out of the air, and get it back in the soil where it belongs.
But
I
if you
actually want
cut
to
your
get a strain of
cut your
bamboo
grass-
growing out here.
if you cut your grass, it's the same thing, right? You could use the grass
But
clippings for
it's a catch-22 because bamboo will actually get higher into the air and get above our carbon.
Well, what do we do about the beef then?
Okay, Matt A said that bamboo is illegal to have where his house is in New York.
It's
Well,
very
yeah,
invasive.
everything's illegal in New York. I'm surprised you're allowed to breathe air there without a permit.
You're not going to have to worry about New York much longer, Matt.
It is very, very invasive, though. That's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. Bamboo spreads like wildfire.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like a weed, actually. If you plant one, you end up with 100 of them.
You'll never get rid of it
Yep.
without straight up dozing the whole area and taking off, so much topsoil. You can't get rid of it.
Out here, I just don't have to water it.
Yeah, Wes. Yeah,
Perks of the
Wes,
desert.
you're about right. Yeah.
What we got going in the side chat there, Cheryl?
Basically, they're just following along with what we're saying. The only thing that was not touched on was the beef prices are already up.
Oh, but they're going to go higher when the corn does not come out this year, and the corn prices are higher, and they're shipping it in. The corn prices are actually getting ready to go higher than they are now.
That should be the soybeans too, then.
Yeah, brace yourself. It's going to be bad this year. Very bad.
Yeah,
That's
I can't wait for
watching
the
the
gas
news,
prices
and
and the
it's-
ethanol.
Yeah.
The news has been really bad about all the farms.
One thing I would like to ask about, and I don't know the exact name of it, but it starts with an H. It's a mound. I see a lot of them in the gardening videos. What is all that about? I've never seen it before, and I don't know what they're about. Can you talk about those? And why?
Hilling?
Huh?
Hilling?
No, it's not healing. It's hoople mounds, or I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Oh,
As in
Hugelkultur?
hugelkultur mounds.
Yeah.
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 yeah, hugelkultur. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, basically what they're doing is they're creating a compost pile under the dirt, and it's a great way to garden. It's a great way to keep your worms and everything else alive in the winter because it's constantly got something to feed on when everything is breaking down, and your plants ingest that a whole lot easier because they're going in to get the mineral base. which is where my book really preaches. We've destroyed and we've farmed off so many minerals that nobody is putting back. When we start putting that stuff back in the soil and start turning the conditions back around, we'll get back into the healthier foods and get off the medications.
But they're saying something about the beef because of the beef are eating the foliage, which is creating less
Oh yeah, it's nowhere near
carbon,
as healthy.
which is
Yeah,
causing less carbon back into the air or
Oh,
back
that's-
into the
yeah.
back into the earth.
Yeah, well, you quit listening to AOC. You know, cow farts didn't cause global,
AOC.
that didn't cause global warming. I'm sorry, Will.
I don't even listen to that. I think I listened to that stuff overseas.
There's the guy, Cheryl. There's the guy you need to talk to about hugelkultur. He does it on a slightly different way, but FFP, Howie at Food Forest Permaculture, does an incredible job at what he calls, and I'm going to call it the wrong thing again, but it's like pathway something, and I'm going to screw it up, Howie, and I don't want to, but that he does a hugelkultur system in his pathways at his compound in his food forest, and it does an incredible job with what he's got going on.
It's a food forest.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is literally.
Yep.
I do watch his channel. I just didn't know how that worked.
He has a video.
Yeah. Now it basically is just like growing on a compost pile. Is that basically what you're saying?
In a sense,
and you
yes,
don't
yeah.
turn.
But it's a slower process. It's a slower breakdown. So instead of having to have milled down trees, Howie can go in and put down an entire tree, entire branches, and let nature break it down naturally the way Mother Nature intended it.
Okay.
That's it. Pathway Soil Bank. He's got a video up. You can watch it. He gives you all the ingredients you need.
Oh, okay.
I put a bunch of tree trimmings and everything else in my keyhole gardens as well.
It's awesome. It's full of minerals. The trees go the deepest and bring back the most of the mineral world. They're going to have everything within them. So why not use the trees for that?
Oh, yeah. I know. I worked for a farmer back in Washington when I still lived there. I'd work for him on weekends, and he had like a feedlot right where he fed all of his cattle. But we would take all that cow poop and we would push it up into a big pile out to the pasture, and then we would take and push like it was right on a river, so we pushed the sandy loam up into the edges of it, and any of the dead brush or anything that was out there by the riverbank that came down during the flood season and everything, that all went into that big heap of cow poop. And by the end of the season, by the next spring, that thing was just full of vegetation, and that's what they used to feed their cattle with.
Right. Any place you've got an active food web, that stuff is going to break down incredibly well and give you back the minerals you need. You're using Mother Nature to do it the way it should be.
Yeah, he was hardly buying any hay. Yeah, they were buying hardly any hay for feed for those cows.
Sorry.
Here's Sebastian.
Yeah, he's after that cat again. Sorry about that.
That darn cat.
That cat is so mean to him.
FFP is saying layers of leaves, kitchen waste, lawn grass, wood ash, biochar. Yeah, I read some of this stuff. Chop and drop.
That's the ingredients list.
Yeah, and that's what make you like the gardener of the year. You take all that stuff, mix it up, and then you let it compost out, and you use that in your food beds.
Oh no, he's planting right on top of it. You don't even have to move it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably got, what do you think, like 6 or 7 inches of dirt on top of it.
Something like that, because he went pretty deep. The video I saw, he went really deep.
Yeah, that would work. I think that would work perfectly.
Well, it's better for if you have a raised bed. You don't want to buy all that dirt. You can just put a whole bunch of sticks and leaves and tree trimmings and all that stuff, and kind of take up some space. So you're not buying all this garden soil. That's the best part.
And you kind of need to tune it to your area. You have to play with all these recipes to your area a bit, because everything's going to be slightly different wherever you're at.
Exactly. That's what Ron was saying at the beginning. It all really breaks down to where you're at. And you're the one that lives there, so you should know best what grows best in your area and which to use as I guess, compost, right, Ron?
Right. Basically. Because as you're using your compost, you're going to have all of the active microbial life that is conducive to your area. People don't understand, there are millions of different ones throughout the world, and every area is going to be contributing to it in its own way and have its own strains. And each one of those strains is going to break down individually to the type of grass, to the type of plant, to the type of tomato, to the type of this, to the type. Every one of them is going to be specific. So you're going to get really, really down and narrow depending on what grow zone you're in, what type of soil you have, what amendments you have. So yeah, all of that still goes back to, if you don't have an active food web, which is what all this chemical spraying is doing, which is what using the NPK system is killing or stopping, is just wiping out. It's stopping everybody. All this flooding is because the food web is stopped and all of the soil is compacting. We're turning everything into clay because there's no active organic life in the soil any longer. We've got to put it back.
5 inch. Yeah, FFP says 5-inch layers for everything except biochar or wood ash.
That makes sense.
for his mix, yeah.
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 But if
the soil's too deep, the roots just aren't going to make it there.
And if you do that, whatever Ron said, you can let that grow. You can let some of your plants grow into the seeding stage and collect those seeds for the next year. Then you start your generational, I can't think of it, generational change.
Right.
Yeah. You're not going and buying the seeds and have to do it all over again. You just have one section of each, whatever you're growing, and make those seed plants. So you're starting a generation of new plant growth. You're going to be ending up with a whole lot better than what you're going to be getting in the store.
Right. Well, as you go organic and get away from the chemical system, your soil is naturally going to start opening up, and the food web is going to start naturally coming back in your yard, in your gardens, in what have you. And you're going to find that Mother Nature is going to come in with her weeds, like the dandelion, and start breaking up the clay level and opening things up. You don't want to kill those things. You don't want to be putting down pest, weed control, because you're stopping Mother Nature from opening that up. People don't understand. A lot of these things have been tested on open fields, in open farms, in organic farms versus your NPK farms. And what they're finding is that these roots will go down 30, 35 feet, 40 feet in some instances on just a dandelion plant. Don't screw that up. Let that thing be the living organic matter. When you cut that yellow head off, you're stopping it anyways. It's going to die in the soil. It's going to be your organic matter. It's going to allow the soil to start absorbing water again and break up the clay bed. That's why I was messing around with the radishes and got the results I got.
Show them those radishes, Ron.
This is a standard radish that everybody has seen. I pulled this out of the garden today, one of my test beds, just screwing around a little bit.
I'll see if I can get him up there while you're talking.
And right next to it, I'm growing this monster.
It's the wrong one.
This is just the testing. This is a test bed. I can take this 10 times further, but it's in the soil conditions. It's in using pathway gardening. It's in understanding Mother Nature will help you do everything, but you got to get back to nature. You've got to get away from the NPK system. Stop shopping at the local stores. If you need help looking for stuff, get it from my book. All the information is there. There's a ton of information in my book that'll tell you where to find all this stuff to go that way. Get a hold of Howie. Howie will send you out a flyer. He's got the exact ingredients laid out for pathway soil gardening, and it gives you all the instructions as to what to do this stuff and bring it back to nature's way. We don't need to be wasting this money on this stuff. We can go a different way and get better results than you're getting at any store.
Also, you can get the right bugs to help keep the bad bugs away.
Well, that's see, that goes two different directions. Yes, ladybugs, and I'm sure Howie can list a bunch of others, praying mantises, this, that, and the other. You can order those in. You can spread them out throughout your gardens, what have you. But you got to understand, Mother Nature brings in a lot of bugs to kill off sick and weak plants. That's how nature works, is to get rid of the weak and the sick and bring on the healthy. As your soils get healthier, as the food web returns in your yards and your gardens, your plants get healthier. They will naturally put out defenses to stop the invasive bugs. So yeah, you can help yourself by adding bugs, but at the same time, if you increase your soil contents and increase everything we've farmed off, the bugs are going to go away naturally because the defenses are going to go up.
Well, I also don't use any chemicals in my gardening at all either. One of the other reasons why I say don't do that is if you're using them now to artificially prop you up, if everything falls apart, you have no idea what yields you're going to even approach are.
Right. Well, you're going to end up eating any of those amendments that you put in. If nature doesn't absorb it naturally, why would you put a chemical in and force it into your plants and then eat it?
And that link that's being put into the stream there is the link to buy his book. And I plug his book all the time, but we're plugging it tonight for sure. And you can get it on Amazon, you guys. So click on that link and pick up a copy of Ron's book. It covers everything that we're talking about tonight.
I lost it now. A couple of things. Howie said radishes are an annual
Wrong one, guys.
nitrogen fixer for free nitrogen, and then he put
Howie?
he also put up something else. Build pathway soil bank for free in your environment. Also,
right.
something else.
Howie, I'm only pulling like 2 or 3 radishes out of the test bed. It's got 150 radishes growing in it. I'm not taking the radishes out. I'm grinding them in this year.
And
It's
those
too
are
hot
your
for radishes where I'm at.
too hot.
It's way too hot. It kills them.
Well, you just have to find a different way to do it.
Well, I do it in the springtime, but right now it is just, it's bad. It's hot.
Well,
You have to know your area, absolutely.
yeah, you're going to have to slowly work to literally find ones that adapt to your area after several generations. That's what I keep dealing with myself, is finding things that after growing them for a while, they're adapted to this area. On the flip side of that, though, is just like people are bad when we inbreed for a long time, so are your plants. So you got to have a good diversity in them.
He's got a point.
I like my Unc Dad potato plants.
Now, there was a question that Reed actually answered it in the chat, but I think it ought to be brought up too. Was Wayne had asked about using the manure from different animals, and Reed actually answered it, but he said yes, that you can. They were asking about like goats, and I was trying to find it and I can't find it again.
Rumnets.
K-Fab, just ask me over on my channel. I'll gladly answer those questions.
I was going to tell her that, Ron.
Let's see, I can't see the chat.
Just
so
drop
sorry.
me an email or something. I'll take care of it.
He's awesome.
Actually, I've
Alana.
been
He'll help you
composting
out.
my cat litter.
Yeah, mine died, so I can't see the chat.
Oh man, your phone died.
No, my tablet that I was reading all the stuff on died, so now I'm just sitting here blind.
I got my
So
tablet
that's anything.
plugged in.
Howie also brought up that there's two types of nitrogen fixers, annual and it's going so
Yeah.
fast.
And
Period.
Perennials.
Okay.
hey, gotta love carpet pythons. How you doing?
Hey, gay.
So we haven't missed any questions, or we want to open to any questions, or what do you want to do?
I think we're open to any questions at this point.
Yeah, I think we got them all. I think I caught them all.
Uncle says he's got fungus and viruses in his fruit trees. How can he fix that?
I would have to actually see them. If you can take a walk with your camera and show them to me, myself or Howie can probably answer those. Howie would probably know better depending on which fruit trees they are. Because
Yeah,
I'm more so concentrated in the soil. Howie actually deals with the individual plants.
So we
didn't
actually have two plant doctors in here.
you said fungus and viruses? Didn't you do that with somebody, Ron? Didn't you get a video from someone and was able to tell them?
Yeah, once I can actually see it, I actually have to see what form it is. I don't, because you can give the wrong advice and actually have them go out there and hurt the plant.
Yeah.
That's the fear for me, and especially when you're dealing with a lot of your older trees, and some of that stuff. Again, with the food web being knocked down the way it is, and the chemicals being used, and the free spraying that they're doing, and we really don't know what they're putting out there. They say it's a bug spray for this, that, or the other. Are we sure that that's what they're actually spraying? So they could be putting stuff up to deliberately knock down these trees. I mean, we've got areas in forests falling over for no reason in the middle of an untouched forest, and it's because of all of this spraying. We would actually have to see which fungus and virus you're dealing with. My best advice to you would be get amendments around those trees and in the soil to start bringing that tree back up to a healthier plant before we actually see anything.
KFAB said her basil plant's leaves started turning dark. Someone told them to pull that when it was sick. It would spread to the others, and she wants to know if that's right.
On basil, yeah, I would agree with basil. That's a delicate plant. Unless Howie's got a simple fix, but with basil, yeah, I would pull the sick plant, get it out of there.
Okay.
Mycelium is the web underground. Find that one and put it up there.
Well, that's that super massive fungus. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Mycelium is very, very important.
And that's that single cell.
Yeah, I think
That's
it's
the one
the
that's a lot.
largest.
That's what people misunderstand when they talk about. Let's talk about just your basic garden. I don't care what size you want to talk about, whether it be a 40 by 40 or an acre by an acre. It really doesn't matter. The mycelial life, everything in the food web, and all different aspects of the food web. They have tested this scientifically with colleges and this, that, and the other. You can go in with a chemical amendment and apply it on one part of that garden, and in under 10 minutes, the other side of that garden is automatically responding and making changes to adapt to those chemicals being put down. Because the mycelial life can reach over a mile in just one life form and bring back information. People don't understand when they start wiping out the food web, when they start over-tilling, when they start leaving the soil bare and barren, they're killing off those life forms to help those plants get healthier and to know what's going on before it gets there. Everyone wants to look at gardens and go, oh my God, this looks dry and I got to water and this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, the food web itself can be down there in the soil underneath, reaching out and bringing back moisture to the plant, and then you're going to go over there and drown the food web. by pouring on too much water. You've got to be careful. The food web is delicate. You can amp it up, you can make it stronger, but they misunderstand what really is the food web and what it's capable of doing for every single type of plant that's out there.
Very good.
Have we-
Boy. Go ahead.
Have we hit on any like actual type of plants yet? Like, what are some good ones for people that are just kind of wanting to get started? Like, what's the first ones they should try? Have we hit on any of that yet?
No.
Do you mean like the for like calorie and nutrition dense, or do you mean just easy to grow, Anthony?
Either or. Just I don't know if we've actually talked about any kind of specific plants, because I think a lot of people that are kind of new, all the soil amendments, don't get me wrong, they're very, very important, but I think it might be a little over the head of a lot of people. And a simple, hey, these 3 feed less on the soil, but they're really good with nutrients, or this one's super easy to start in this area. I don't know, just trying to spitball ideas.
Well, when I first started, one of the first things that and it's in my book, and I have no problem leaning back on it again. My neighbor gave me tomato plants and said, start here. And I went back and I followed my father's routine. And I'll be honest with you, the one that is going to tell you the most about what's going on in your soil, about what's going on with all of your amendments, your water, this, that, or the other, and it is the most forgiving, but it's the most telling, is your tomato plants. Anyone that has never farmed before or never gardened before, I would say get yourself a cherry tomato and plant that in a pot and start there and start to understand what you're dealing with. If you've got the amendments right, and honestly, take your tomatoes, stick it in a bowl of water, and it should sink. Any tomato you buy anywhere, if it doesn't, it's not healthy for you. I wouldn't be eating it. But despite that aspect of it, tomatoes to me is one of the most telling, that has given me the most information out of my soil and out of my soil conditions. When 40 feet away, the same tomato plant coming from exactly the same nursery is doing poorly, mine is trumpeting over everybody in 15, 20 feet tall, loaded with tomatoes, and right next door the same plant is doing terrible, all because and the tomatoes telling me what's going on in both yards. You can read a tomato faster than you can read a corn stalk, is my opinion.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was saying try corn. Sometimes corn is a good way to tell whether you have the right nutrients in your soil.
Well, Will, how and I'm not saying you're incorrect, but how tall are your average corn stalks?
Probably 6 feet.
They're supposed to be double that.
Well, I thought 6 feet I was getting pretty lucky.
No, they're supposed to be 10, 12 to 18 feet.
Wow.
My corn is a dwarf corn. I grow a dwarf corn here, so it gets only about 5 feet tall.
But that's a specific type, right? Specific heirloom, specific breed.
Yeah, it's called Painted Mountain. It's an old Indian corn.
Okay.
And then, actually, I also recommend for a good starter crop, beans. I think they're a lovely thing to start just planting all sorts of varieties.
And, yeah, great legume.
Add to your soil.
Don't get to the plant, it still adds to the soil amendments.
And then, of course, they also they've got a really good calorie density for you and filled with protein.
Right.
Squash might be a good starter one too.
Oh, good point, Will. Yeah.
Squash is very forgiving, especially like a zucchini or a yellow squash in a certain area, because that stuff will put out quick.
Yeah, and it grows. It'll grow just about in any climate.
Oh, actually, I got a question for you, Ron. I have found in my own personal experience the varieties of plants that aren't bred to grow massive sizes actually do the best for me. They seem to be closer to their original origins, and they just do better for me in growing. Have you had similar experience?
No, mine dwarf everything that the book says. Sorry. Sorry.
Hey, you can't have everything your way,
Well, that's like I was saying with the radishes. I mean, this is not normal. This is not supposed to do this. You know, this is supposed to be, it states right on the package, it's supposed to be like a cherry tomato size radish. And this is what I'm pulling out of my beds. Um, you know, when the soil conditions are right and you've got as much as you can put into the soil and then some, understand each one of our plants is going to absorb so many different minerals and nutrients out of the soil. They have to be there. You will get tremendous results. Things are supposed to be 3 times larger than what we're currently seeing on a lot of our plants. But since we farmed off 85% of everything and we're dealing with so much compaction, people aren't seeing what the plants are actually capable of doing. I've seen stuff come out of Howie's place that just blows my mind that I don't see in my neighborhood or even out in the wild here in Ohio. But because his soil conditions are right and the amendments are there and everything is going and teaming, everything is coming back to his plants and he's getting the results that just blow my mind.
I was just watching the chat, and Kaylin's talking about their corn this year is not usually what it usually is. She said it's looking really messed up. Corn here is a mess, even at the farmer's market.
I think she's in Minnesota. I think
She's in Iowa.
Ooh,
Yeah, she's an Iowa.
they got slammed this year with water. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
they got flooded pretty good.
Yeah, Yankee from Yankees Outdoor Adventures, he's in Ohio, and he was showing a cornfield that did not even grow because of the flooding. So yeah,
Right. The soil compaction, the conditions that are going on are absolutely disgusting. The good news is, from my understanding, and I've only seen one article on this, I've not seen it published anywhere else. I'm still looking for another article to back it. But somebody in Washington, D.C., that is in power in Trump's administration somewhere, somehow has ordered the stopping of the chemtrails across the United States. That doesn't mean they've stopped around the world because that's where they're spraying elsewhere. But at least in the United States, they've called for an immediate halt to all of it. I just have not found supporting information to back that up with a second article. But if that's the case, then somebody out there is paying attention and this is going to come to a stop. We can now start reversing everything.
Well, I do know that I see less of them in the sky now. I
Right.
live,
Well,
I live in. It's just wide open here, so any airplane that goes across, you can see it for miles. And the chemtrails have been. Well, when I first moved back here about 3 years ago, they were all over the place. Chemtrails were, but I'm seeing less and less of them now.
right.
So I'm thinking maybe they are doing less of it.
Lori, did you see Howie's video on potatoes and how easily that stuff came out of that healthy soil? Howie just did a recent video a couple of weeks back. He was out with another farmer that does everything organic. And these guys aren't even digging at the soil and they're pulling out huge groups of potatoes. Absolutely phenomenal. My only thing was I didn't see a whole lot of worms, but the soil looked incredible.
actually, I finally got some potatoes for harvest this year. It's the first one I've gotten, and I got some nice, good sized ones. And we did
Awesome.
find quite a few worms as we were digging them up. Actually,
Great. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah,
You want that all over your yard, actually.
Worms are good for your crops.
Well, they are the aerators. They're
Yeah.
the things that are going to turn everything around. Besides Mother Nature's plants, worms are nature's rototiller. I think I heard Howie say that one time. They turn over everything. They eat through everything. They ingest and leave trails behind that are the best possible organic matter to have in your soil. The last thing you want to do is rototill everything.
yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. I actually just like to take like a pitchfork and just kind of turn the soil over in a couple places for some stuff.
Yeah,
That's
crack it
kind of
open.
what I usually do.
Right. See, most people aren't even going to be able to do that. They're going to go out there with a pitchfork. They're going to go to stand on that thing, and it's not going to sink because the soil conditions are wrong. They don't understand
Actually,
that they can fix
my
their
soil-
yard and fix
Yeah,
their
my soil
garden.
was like that. It was a rock hard mess, and it's
Right.
taken a couple years. And if I step into it now, I'll end up, up to almost my knee.
Right. Well, see, I've got a friend. I don't know how many of you guys watch, and I won't bring him up here because he's not in the channel. But he's been doing some testing. He read the book. His wife actually went out and applied my process to their yard, and in 2 weeks the flooding stopped. It's that instantaneous, and the wife did the work.
You mean
Yeah,
flooding
he
in the
hates your
house, or
book.
I'm missing something?
He hates your book. He has to mow too much now.
Who is
Well, so okay, you know who I'm talking about now, but
Yeah, I do.
yeah, all she did was go out with the ingredients that I provide in the book and applied them to the soil, basically threw them down, and within 2 weeks the flooding conditions that he was fighting with every time it rained have subsided. The soil is returning. He's starting to get everything back. The food web is kicking in. Everything is coming back in his yard.
Yeah, there's no water standing there either.
Right.
Okay, we've got a question here. Steve wants to know, how do you attract worms to your garden? He said he had worms, but they're gone now.
Right. You've lost the organic matter. So, okay. The attractant level in the food web is a smell like, oh God, my brain just went blank. Ammonia. And it's actually an off gas that the food web gives off as it's getting the sugars from the plant, because it's an exchange system. All of the food web, all of everything that we eat is an exchange system. We eat the plants get the minerals, and it goes all the way down to a microscopic level. To bring the worms back, you need to get organic matter down in there. If every time you garden, you go out there and pull all the roots out of the soil, you're removing the organic matter. Just clip off your plants and move on for the next year. Don't worry about the roots being in the soil. You want to get amendments down in there that the worms are going to be eating. Another way of attracting them is to add sugar. I go to an all natural one, which is deer molasses, deer grade molasses, and just a hint of ammonia, and spray the bed down when it's loaded up with organic matter, and let the worms come in and feast. And it does happen in under 2 weeks. I took a dead bed from my neighbor's after he passed away, 3 years after he had passed away, nothing growing in it. I went in, added the process, did everything, added amendments, went back in there 2 weeks later to plant all the new plants that we had gotten in, and the thing was packed full of worms. I could not believe the instantaneous turnaround. But it happens in under 2 weeks. They will come back. They just have to have the organic matter and a reason to come back. And it's basically you're sticking a compost pile in the soil, and the worms come back. They smell that compost and they come back in droves.
And so, what if you were to go out there and just like throw your garbage from like lettuce or coffee grounds or anything like that, and just threw it out there? That
Right,
would
kitchen
like
table
bring
scraps.
that would bring everything back in, right?
Basically, because what's going to happen is, in a sense, everything's going to start molding, everything's going to start decaying, and as soon as that stuff starts penetrating the soil, the worms smell that and they come back.
Here's
Yeah,
an
right
odd
on.
one for you guys: is I actually compost brown corrugated cardboard. I found
Yep.
it works really well.
As long as you don't have, well, it depends on the print and the type of ink they use, but yeah, you're right. You just
Yeah,
don't
I
want
take all the
glossy
tape
cardboard.
off and everything.
You
Right.
don't want what? Glossy?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't
Newspaper
break
work.
down as well. It's actually toxic for the worms. Right, biomass. That's the word. That's what you're using those cardboards and those amendments. That's a biomass. That is something that the worms can come in and ingest. And think about what cardboard and newspaper are, and paper itself. They are just wood scraps. And we're telling you, bury your logs, bury your trees, bury your fresh wood chips, fresh, not stained, not man tampered with. Bury that stuff directly in the ground. Bury the leaves. Let the worms get in there and do their thing. Put the biomass back in the soil.
Does the print from like newspaper, the ink that they use, does that not mess with it?
Well, that's why you try to avoid the glossy. But yeah, the ink will slow it down. I don't necessarily use newspaper. I use newspaper when I have a specific type of marigold or something like that in a really precious flower bed. I'll go in with newspapers and shred that up and lay that down so that I don't have anything else growing around it until the marigold spreads out to help control the food web and not allow it to dry out. You don't want the top inch of the soil to dry out when you first get certain plants started.
The rougher the paper, the easier, the better it is to compost with.
Right, because it's already ready to break down.
I used to take an old bathtub and I sunk it down in the ground, and I filled it up full of really rich dirt, and then I just started putting all the table scraps in there. And then every time I went fishing and came home, I just dumped the worms in there that I had left over.
Right.
And it wasn't long, and they started mating and having more worms. But I left that big hole at the end of it. I didn't cover it up. And they started migrating out through that hole, and they were into my garden in no time. I mean, they were out there. I had the best garden. I mean, that's when I had the corn that grew twice as tall as me and stuff, But I had a really, I read that in the book somewhere, so I tried it. And that's exactly what happened. I had more worms than I knew what to do with. And those actually worked their way into my garden area. And I never really tilled my garden up. I was like Reed. I'd go out there in the spring and I took a pitchfork and a regular garden rake and move stuff around. And that's about it, Other than that, it was just always a mess, But yeah, worms are. I'm sold on worms.
Well, right, and that's a dead sign that your microbial life, your food web, is thriving in the garden. Without it, I mean, and that's why in my book there's the test to go out and check your yard, check your soil. We interestingly, for entertainment purposes only, called it the wand test. Take a screwdriver, take a pitchfork, take a shovel, go out in the middle of your grass and see how deep it will go in naturally with just a little bit of force, and see how easily it comes back out. If you can't go down more than a half inch without a major struggle, you've got problems and you need to read my book and fix the yard. And it's just going to reflect back into your gardens. A lot of people don't look at what you're actually doing when you're doing a lot of this stuff. They don't look at the yard around the garden. They may have an incredible thriving garden, but what they actually have is a puddle, because they've got a garden sitting in the middle of this hard packed yard and grass. The grass is struggling. It's all clay. And and then they wonder why they're half their garden is flooded out. All their plants are dying. Well, it's because it's sitting in a bowl. And every time it rains, all the water rushes into the bowl and it has nowhere else to go because the rest of the yard is not draining and not receiving the water correctly.
Okay, just a couple of things that's being talked about in the chat, and some of you are responding to the questions and stuff, is they're talking about coffee grounds, and they're talking about whether or not you should bury it or keep it on top of the ground. So
you can do both. You can do both.
Doesn't really matter. Just be careful using coffee grounds when it's already acidic.
Right, but you want to make absolutely certain that you've rinsed it out thoroughly. You don't have it bleeding any longer. And if you can actually, a neat little trick, take your coffee grounds after you've rinsed them thoroughly, even with that little paper basket or whatever that goes with it, the filter. Take that and stick it back in the can and put the lid back on it. When you start adding more and more to those, you're going to start seeing that microbial life that I'm talking about. You're going to see that food web actually start going to work on those coffee grounds instantaneously. When you spread that out over, say, a clover patch, the clover patch goes away because it's an instantaneous blast of nitrogen getting back in the soil.
Yeah, nitrogen burn.
Well, it doesn't burn it. It doesn't burn it, but you put in so much coming off the coffee grounds that the clover naturally fades away. Clover only moves in evasively when nitrogen is needed.
Interesting. Interesting.
Sure.
Actually, one of the very best fertilizers that I found that really helps get things going around here isn't really a fertilizer; it's a urea.
We'll see you, Howie. Thanks for stopping in, buddy.
I appreciate your helping out there, Howie.
Yep. Night,
Yeah.
FFP.
You have a
I
good
wish
night.
I could have read it. Sorry, Howie.
He did say that the coffee grounds was a good source of nitrogen. That's the only other thing that I see in here.
Just make sure you're not adding like an acidic coffee ground to an already acidic area, and
Right.
you wonder why you can't grow like a base-loving plant. I live in South Carolina. A lot of our plants are, I mean, we already have kind of acidic soil. That's why blueberries and stuff like azaleas grow really well already. So when you have a ground like that, you don't want to throw all your coffee grounds in it because then you're going to wonder why you can't grow anything but blueberries. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
So what do you grow in your area then, Anthony?
Well, the unfortunate side is when I moved into my spot, a lot of my soil was already turned and a lot of fill was kind of put in there. So I had to build on top. That's why I got a lot of raised beds. And I had to put a lot of time in doing a lot of raised bed. And all I do is just go in the woods, cut down a whole bunch of trees and log off, 4x8 and 4x4 squares, just kind of fill it in with compost and dirt and that kind of stuff. But chicken manure was my saving grace for my garden, especially with my 3 sisters. That worked out really well. And I've got a nice loose soil now, at least a foot deep, so I can grow my carrots and my potatoes. I got sweet potatoes that are going pretty good right now because they like the heat. So when it comes down to the middle of the summer heat, okra, cucumbers, and sweet potatoes. Those are the big 3.
Wayne is wanting clarification. Rinse coffee grounds in colander until it runs clear.
That's correct.
Okay.
I actually, because of my pH being a bit higher,
Yeah.
it having slightly acidic nature is actually good for my soil because it brings it down a little bit.
Yeah, for you it's great. If you're running higher, then that's good. Absolutely. I got to put lime in mine because I got to try to base it out a little bit because mine's kind of running about a 5.5 before I built the raised beds on top. See, I didn't realize it until when I first moved in. I took a soil sample to my local extension. I found out. So I was at a 5.5.
Wow.
So,
Incredibly well.
is there something that he can do without buying lime, Ron?
Well, yeah, he can naturally neutralize it by having, a nice big bonfire and spreading out the ashes. That's what nature does in the wild.
Yep.
So yeah, he can bring in a lot of wood ash, and add that to the soil and start bringing it around in the yards and what have you. But then he's talking about getting a lot of aeration going because you put that all down, but that can actually carpet and blanket the food web area and stop it from working correctly. He'd have to get in there with an aerator and punch holes to start driving that stuff down into the soil.
Or I know, Anthony, just get your wife to wear some high heel shoes and go walk around the garden.
Yeah, get her some golf shoes and a putter.
It's just one of those things where I didn't realize how acidic the soil actually was until I moved in. But that's what pine does. A lot of pine and a lot of oaks. The oak trees here, I wonder why oaks leaves don't compost over the winter like my sweet gums and my other plants do, because oaks have a lot of tannins, a lot of tannic acid, and acid. So obviously it's going to acidify the soil. So my blueberries are fantastic. Definitely learning how to handle it from my blueberries, but other things do require a little bit of a baser soil. So I had to learn that lesson the hard way.
What's your phosphorus level like out there?
It's actually not bad. I really don't have to add too much for phosphorus. Most of my stuff, I try to take all my waste that I have and throw it back in there, so I'm kind of maintaining the same levels. But I let the weeds go that bring in a lot of phosphorus. And
see, I've got tons of phosphorus. It's taking work to bring it down.
The nitrogen's the calcium is what I'm more worried about because I got to add a lot of calcium to my soil because I get a lot of blossom end rot if I don't.
Mm.
Yeah, I miss not having all the area that I used to work. I had to bring all mine stuff in too. I had to. I actually brought in a bunch of bark that wasn't treated or anything, and I put it in, and I just uh, took a small rototiller and rototilled it all in together, and
We'll
then
see
I
you
added,
quicker.
then I added manure on top of that, and let it just kind of use that as a growing medium the first year, and then after that, I just used it over and over again, adding in uh, bat guano year after year, making sure it stayed nice and hot. But it works good, but I don't have much space here, so I kind of miss not being able to work with it or anything.
Does anyone else in the chat have any questions?
Yep. Anybody else got anything? We're about to the end of our hour anyway.
Hour. We've gone an hour and a half.
I know.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. If you guys don't have anything else, we're gonna close her up. I want to thank everybody for coming. The panel can stay here after I close it up. We can talk about next week if you want. All right, you guys. If you guys don't have anything else out there in the chat, thanks a lot for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys got something out of it for sure. I know I did, and I've grown a lot of stuff in my life. But I want you guys to go out there and check out the Green Wizard's book. He sells it on Amazon. He put the link in the description down there somewhere in the chat. It's been there all night. But it's a good book. It's not like a big read or anything, but it's got lots of information in it. And after all that said, you guys have a great evening. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, time flies when you're